He'll give the drink. Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Melchin, Chair of Enmax Board, and want to welcome everybody to our annual general meeting of Enmax Corporation. Our annual meeting is an opportunity for us to share with City Council and really with all Calgarians the operations and performance of the company over the past year, 2013. And we're really thrilled that we have that opportunity to do that. This year we're also, as I think in a previous year, joined in a webcast, so that there are others on the webcast as well as those who have joined us today, not just here in the Downtown District Energy Centre. This is our second year of holding it here in this facility of Enmax, and I think it's the right venue. It certainly gives us a chance to profile one of our facilities, and we welcome you here today. Because it's in an operating facility, we want to note some safety information for those in attendance. This, as I mentioned, is an operational facility, and safety is very paramount to us at Enmax. We have worked diligently to ensure that our safety record is first and foremost among all of our employees, among the public at large. And so, as a practice, we'd like to, in the unlikely event of an emergency, despite this facility was under a state of emergency last June flood and had a substantial amount of water, but in the event of some other kind of an emergency, we would ask all those in attendance if they would exit back out in the same door that they came here, just at the back of this room. If you need to, there will be another exit which you could go up into the second floor and exit on those. Those are two main exit points from this building at the top of the staircase. I thought we'd also mention, not part of this meeting per se, but today is actually the National Day of Honor, as was proclaimed by Prime Minister Stephen Harper, but it's in recognition of the efforts and sacrifices of our Canadian citizens and soldiers who served in Afghanistan. And we really do take for granted too often the freedoms we enjoy and the liberties and the great country we have because of those who do, and many times, defend our country and the way of life that we enjoy. Before we start, I'd like to welcome members of City Council that are with us today. We have a quorum of council with us present. Deputy Mayor Brian Pintcott will be acting on behalf of Mayor Nenshi, who is unable to attend with us today. We have with us Councillors Sean Chu, Peter DeMong, Drew Farrell, Ray Jones, Shane Keating, Joe Maglioka, Richard Putmans, Ward Sutherland, and Evan Woolley. I don't think I've missed anybody else. And we've had the opportunity also, a board meeting with Council just recently, 2 nights ago, and we do very much value that opportunity to see that are we aligned with what the view of the citizens of Calgary ask and demand of their representatives at Council in providing those services to the citizens of Calgary. So we thank them very much for their support and for their attendance at this annual general meeting. I would also like to welcome from the Board of Directors, might have them just stand and turn and wave as their names, since they're not up here and profiled by names. Don Lenz, Sarah Morgan Sylvester, James Hankinson, Mike Harris, Dr. Robert Page, Charles Urgrock, Kathleen Sendel, Richard Shaw, and I believe that's the members of our board that are present today. We are very fortunate that we have an exceptional high degree of talent and professional group of diverse talent on the board. We have looked at this substantively in years past about the qualifications and the diversity of strength and skills that are necessary on a board to help see the proper oversight and governance for this company. And I want to thank the board that we have just for their exceptional dedication, time, and abilities to bringing this forward. For my management team, I would first like to welcome Gianna Manis, President and CEO. Our executive team, might have them stand as well, as their names are read, just since they're facing this way, not necessarily the audience. David Halford, Executive Vice President, Finance, Chief Financial Officer. Dave Rand, Executive Vice President, Generation, Information Technology and Supply Chain. James McKee, Executive Vice President, Customer Energy Marketing. Lonnie Enns, Vice President, Wholesale Energy. Lonnie, you've got a question, it looks like, that's coming to you. Robert Hemstock, Executive Vice President, Regulatory Legal Services. Aaron Kurchina, Vice President, Human Resources. Tamara Van Brent, Vice President, Communications and Public Relations. Scott McDonald, Vice President, Projects and Engineering. We also have Diana Stevenson, our Director of Governance and Shareholder Relations, will be acting as meeting secretary. Today we have two parts to our meeting agenda. The first part of our meeting constitutes the formal part of the annual shareholder meeting. And then following my remarks and those of Deputy Mayor Pincott, we have three items that we'll bring forward to the shareholder for receipt and approval. And after we've concluded the formal business of the meeting, we will turn the time over to Gianna Mainish, President and CEO of the company, to review the results and operations of 2013. We will hold a general question and answer session and encourage everyone in attendance to share their questions with us, but hold them till the end of all of the presentation. As meeting chair, I would like to now call the formal annual shareholder meeting to order. Members of Council, you have before you an agenda in your materials, and as indicated, there are three formal matters of business to be presented today. The first one being the receipt of Enmax's 2013 financial statements and annual report. The second being the election of the Board of Directors, and the third being the appointment of the auditor for 2014. Copies of that information supporting each recommendation above, including draft resolutions, were prepared in support of these recommendations, was sent to Council in advance of our meeting today. You know, Calgarians have been fortunate for over a century to have the reliability of electricity coming into our homes, and we take that as a very critical aspect of electricity. In fact, most of us do. We don't think about, we just go and turn the light switch on and off, and we take these things for granted. But they only happen because of a lot of people who work hard to ensure that the proper infrastructure, the right people, and all of the things are in place so that this can happen day in, each hour, each minute, each time of our lives. And it's a proud legacy that we work to and inspire to see that we could continue to create that value for the customers, for our stakeholders, and certainly for all of the citizens of Calgary and of this province. Since 1998, when Enmax was first formed as a corporation, we have contributed over $813 million in dividends to the City of Calgary, which has been a substantial amount of revenue source for the citizens of Calgary as they receive their services. This company has been a very profitable and very successful organization by the leadership of the team and by its implementation of strategy. In 2013, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the Board of Directors, we were pleased to see that Enmax had a very challenging year, but was able to deliver on a strong performance of its goals, and even despite some of the challenges of flood and otherwise, respond to and have a very successful year. I would first like to, though, thank, and they don't get that attention enough, the 1,800 employees of Enmax for their tremendous service, their contribution, and their dedication each and every day. So when things like flood occur, it's not by accident that they respond willingly and with tremendous dedication to not just an emergency, but they do respond to the day-to-day things that happen such that you are available to see that the lights are on each and every day. We're proud of their response, but I thought I should also recognize Gianna Mainish, as the President and CEO of the organization, was recognized nationally for her leadership under these challenging circumstances. In 2013, she was named by Electricity Human Resource Canada as CEO of the Year for the leadership demonstrated during that time. And that's not a small achievement, and we are very pleased with the leadership that Gianna has been just over 2 years in her tenure, and thank her tremendously for the leadership and the strength, and certainly for everything that she did during that time, and well deserving of that award. In 2013, the board worked to ensure that we remained well positioned for all the things that are in governance. And that's part of the real challenge of any board in a very changing, dynamic, evolving circumstances under governance and operations of a complex organization. But we did work hard to streamline the board structure, some of our organizations, so that we could really focus more on the things that are most important. And in that respect, we do deliver, and we want to deliver continuously, information that would be transparent to the public so that they would have the right amount of information that they could understand, and also access to Enmax if they have questions in the future. And we invite that. I know our management team does. The feedbacks from these meetings, such as an annual general meeting and others, are very important to us to understand what it is that you like or how could we improve the service, and we invite that feedback. Following Calgary's municipal election in 2013, the board experienced some changes in composition. Alderman Gord Lowe retired from public office and stepped down from the Enmax board, and we welcome back Councillor Peter DeMong, actually, as a member of the board, and returning as a Councillor Brian Pincott, Deputy Mayor, to our board. They have been very instrumental and helpful to Enmax in the governance oversight, and when we think about getting that reflection of what Calgarians want and what the City of Council challenges are, that feedback and information to us as a board and to management has just been very appreciative, and we're grateful for Gord for his leadership, and welcome Peter to the board. Was elected back in last November, and Brian to returning. I would like to invite Deputy Mayor Brian Pidcott, if he would come forward, just to offer a few comments as our shareholder representative.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here as representing the shareholder, but also as a board member. It's an honor and a pleasure to both work with my colleagues on as the shareholder and with my colleagues on the board and at Enmax. So, and I will do my best not to channel Mayor Nenshi. 2013 was a challenging year. It was a challenging year for the City of Calgary, but it was a challenging year for Enmax as well. And I think that what we saw coming out of 2013, what we saw coming out of the flood, and by the way, this room was filled to the ceiling with water for a couple of days during the flood. But what we saw is value. We talk a lot about wholly owned subsidiaries and companies. When we talk about value, we talk about financial value. We talk about the dividend that Enmax gives to the City of Calgary every year. We talk about that type of value. We talk about what is the financial value of the company. And as a shareholder, that's very, very important. And we have to pay attention, very careful attention to that. But I think the value that we saw that came out of June 2013, the value that we saw in Enmax under the leadership of Gianna, the leadership of the executive team, the leadership of 1,800 employees, the value was community. Enmax stepped up during the flood and was front and center, making sure that our city got back on its feet. And that isn't a monetary value, that is a community value. And that, to me, is something that is very, very important. It is one of the major reasons why we have companies like Enmax. It goes beyond the financial aspects. It goes to the community aspects. So Calgary should be very, very proud of having a company like Enmax, of owning a company like Enmax, for the amazing resilience, the amazing value that it adds to our bottom line every single year, the vision of the organization, the vision that it is executing in Calgary and in Alberta. But it should be proud of having this company because it is an important part of our community. And I think with that, Mr. Chair, I will leave it at that and just say thank you. Thank you for surviving an amazing, challenging, uplifting, devastating year. And thank you for being part of our community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pincott. We are delighted that he's a member of our board and appreciate that, his kind words. We have today, the first item requiring shareholder receipt and approval is the 2013 audited financial statements and financial report. The statements were audited by Deloitte LLP and approved by the Enmax board in March of 2014. Before I call for a motion on the resolution set out in the meeting, are there any questions? There being no questions, may I please have a motion to move the resolution before you? We'll take the motion from Evan. Seconded. Peter. Deputy Mayor Pincott, we call for a preliminary motion.
Thank you. Request a preliminary vote on the following resolution. Be it resolved that the shareholder of Enmax Corporation receive the 2013 annual audited financial statements and auditor's report and the 2013 annual review for information. All in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried. Based on the results of the preliminary vote, I cast the vote in favor of the resolution.
Thank you. We now will move to the next item on the agenda, the election of the directors. The board is recommending the re-election of 13 existing directors, last confirmed by our shareholder in November 2013 when Councillor Peter Demong and Councillor Brian Pincott were appointed to the board following the 2013 municipal election. Our board's current composition is a result of the review of Enmax culture and strategic direction and quite a bit of work with respect to the skills matrix that are required for a board. Before I call for the motion on the resolution set out in your meeting materials, are there any questions? Alderman Chabot. Okay, sorry, Alderman. Councillor, my apology.
I was just wondering if we could vote separately on the two aldermen appointed to the board.
They are presented as a package, but I see no reason why not.
Just a little bit of my rationale. I kind of am inclined to mirror one of my former colleagues in that I think you guys should operate autonomously, independent of political involvement, and so I'll be voting against both of those.
Okay, with that amendment, then sounds like you've allowed that, so maybe we first proceed to the election of the 11 directors.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request a preliminary vote on the following resolution be held, and I will call it as two pieces, so I'll call the public members. So one, be it resolved that the shareholder of Enmax Corporation approves, effective immediately, the re-election of the following directors to hold office until the next annual meeting, and they are Mr. Greg Melchin, Mr. Neil Karmata, Mr. James Harkinson, Mr. Michael Harris, Mr. Donald Lenz, Ms. Sarah Morgan Sylvester, Dr. Robert Page, Ms. Kathleen Sendall, Mr. Richard Shaw, and Mr. Charles Rugrock, and Ms. Gianna Manus. On that, are we agreed? Are there any opposed? And on for the final two board members, Councillor Peter Demong and Councillor Brian Pincott, are we agreed? Are there any opposed? Councillor Chabot is opposed. So, based on the results of the preliminary resolution, I vote in favor of the resolution before us.
Thank you. The next order of business is the approval for the appointment of the external auditor. The Enmax Audit Committee and Board reviewed this item earlier in this month and are recommending the appointment of Deloitte LLP as auditors for Enmax Corporation. The Board of Directors is asking for authorization to fix the remuneration of Deloitte for audit work associated with the 2014 fiscal year. Before I call for a motion on the resolution, are there any questions? There being no questions, may I please have the motion to move the resolution? Councillor Richard Putmans, and a second. Councillor Andre Chabot. Deputy Mayor Pincott.
Thank you very much. Request a preliminary vote on the following resolution. Be it resolved that the shareholder of Enmax Corporation approves the appointment of Deloitte LLP as auditors for Enmax Corporation for the 2013 fiscal year and authorize the board to to fix God, I always want to say that one wrong. Remuneration of Deloitte for audit work associated with the 2013 fiscal year. All in favor of the resolution? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Based on the results of the preliminary resolution, I vote in favor.
I think that the appointment is for the 2014.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was reading that going, we're in the wrong year. So, but I thank you for that, Mr. Hemstock. I
That's
appreciate it.
why we have legal counsel.
Can I restate the resolution, please? Be it resolved that the shareholder of Enmax Corporation approve the appointment of Deloitte LLP as auditors for Enmax Corporation for the 2014 fiscal year and authorize the board to fix remuneration of Deloitte for audit work associated for the 2014 audit year. On that, are we agreed? Anyone opposed? Considering last year we passed the previous motion, I will vote in favor of this motion for this year.
Well, we're thankful for that correction. Given that Deloitte has already completed the 2013, I suspect they've already been paid for 2013. It's a good thing that we do look a little forward to 2014. That concludes the formal portion of the meeting, and I would like to then ask for a motion to terminate the formal annual shareholder meeting and to move to the informal meeting. May I have a motion? Alderman Drew Farrell. Sorry, Councillor. Habits are going to take harder for, I think as councillors, you may have got used to this, but you're not used to this yet either? Okay. The new councillors are used to this. A second. And all in favor? Agreed? Thank you. I'd like to now welcome our President and CEO, Gianna Manis, to the stage to review the operational highlights of 2013 and in my respect, thank her for the great work on this past year.
Well, thank you, Greg, and good afternoon to everyone. Before I get started with my remarks, for those of you in the room, I'd like to just call your attention to the screens that we have on either side, because throughout my comments today, we're going to be highlighting photos of our facilities and also the great work of our employees. So I am pleased to share with you today our story for 2013. For more than 100 years, Enmax has provided Albertans with safe and reliable energy and to power our homes and our businesses across Calgary. In everything we do, our purpose is clear: provide our customers with safe, reliable, and affordable electricity. At Enmax, we make, move, and market electricity. In essence, we think of it as having two rooms in our house. Enmax Energy, the competitive side of our business, makes electricity through power generation facilities and markets the electricity through Alberta-wide energy retail offerings. Enmax Power, the regulated side of our business, moves electricity through transmission and distribution network here in Calgary. We continue to invest in Alberta's future energy so we can fulfill our purpose today and tomorrow. And we know that our success depends on a solid foundation, a foundation that we continue to strengthen in 2013, despite, as you've heard already discussed this morning, some unique and challenging circumstances. Of course, the flood of 2013 was a defining moment for all of Calgary, and it truly demonstrated the community spirit of our Enmax team. In just 8 days, we restored power for all of our customers in the face of extremely challenging circumstances. We stood together throughout that time, in tandem with our colleagues across the City of Calgary, the Calgary Emergency Management Agency, neighboring utilities who came to our aid, and community organizations to re-energize Calgarians' businesses and homes. It was quite an amazing time, despite the difficulties. We were reminded of the power of community. And in that moment, the people of Enmax immediately volunteered in any capacity that we could, helping strangers and giving of ourselves beyond the work that we were putting into restoring power. When I look back, and Councillor Pincott said this a little earlier, one word describes the Enmax team's response to the challenges we faced in 2013: resilient. It's the ability and determination to thrive in unexpected circumstances, and the best word to describe the spirit of Enmax in 2013. Our determination to thrive, to serve our customers, it was stronger than ever, and it remains so. In 2013, we achieved positive financial and operational performance. We delivered a strong dividend to our shareholder, continued to build the electricity generation and wires infrastructure needed to power our city and our province, all the while streamlining our business to ensure we remain efficient and a cost-competitive organization, continuously driven in our mission to serve our customers, our community, and our shareholders. So let me continue by touching on just a few of the many, many successful achievements of the Enmax team in 2013. I'm proud to report that we maintained a strong financial position, providing a solid foundation for current and future growth. We earned a net income of $352.5 million, furthering the strength of our balance sheet. We paid $67.5 million to dividends to the City of Calgary, the highest dividend payout since Enmax began operations in 1998. We invested just over $502 million in capital projects in the Calgary area. We sold Enmax Envision and 50% of our Shepherd Energy Center, netting $808 million in proceeds that were used to repay debt and will be redeployed into our growth opportunities in our business. And we retired $250 million in debt ahead of its scheduled payment in 2014. We also faced significant market challenges over the year, including low power prices and a major outage at the Keep Hills 1 generating facility, a facility we don't own, but from which we receive output under a power purchase arrangement. Even with these challenges, we delivered strong earnings for the year. And Enmax continues to grow the city's original $280 million investment, with shareholders' equity now exceeding $2.4 billion. In 2013, we delivered a return on equity of 14.7% compared to 10.5% in 2012. Our financial performance is critical. It ensures that we can successfully execute our strategic plan and deliver ongoing value, financial value, to our shareholder. We are equally proud of the manner in which our financial results have been achieved. Safety is our highest priority for our employees, our contractors, and the public. We are committed to an injury-free Enmax. To enhance this commitment, we redeveloped our Mission Zero employee safety program in 2013 and made improvements to our apprenticeship program and our journeyman training. We were also recognized by the Canadian Electricity Association for our 2012 safety performance, receiving the President's Award of Excellence for Employee Safety. We measure our success of our Mission Zero program through a key performance indicator called the Total Recordable Injury Frequency Rate. It's a mouthful, but it's very important. And in 2013, we achieved a rate of 0.90, surpassing our target of 1.4, meaning that out of every 100 Enmax employees, less than one was injured on the job last year in 2013. One of the things we're most proud of is that at the end of 2013, we had gone 13 months without a lost time injury, which meant that while our injuries were low, they were also minor in nature. You expect and deserve high standards from Enmax, and we expect even higher standards of ourselves. Compliance with market rules and industry regulation is also critical. One of our key corporate responsibility objectives is to ensure a culture of compliance across our organization, and we are proud of our strong compliance history. Each year, we set a target of 0 findings of noncompliance, and I'm proud to report that, again, we successfully met this annual target in 2013. One of our significant safety achievements in 2013 occurred on site at Shepherd Energy Center, our newest generation facility, which is currently under construction. Now, we had, at various times throughout last year, over 800 tradespeople working on site at any one time. They worked more than 3 million hours in 2013 without a recordable safety incident, which is a fantastic achievement for the work that they're doing out at that facility. Shepard, through a joint venture with Capital Power, will be the largest natural gas-fueled plant in Alberta, adding more than 800 megawatts of power, enough electricity to power half of Calgary. Construction remains, with very important words, on schedule and on budget. In September 2013, we marked a significant construction milestone, which was the placement of the 2 stacks, which are the large stacks that you would see if you drove by the plant. It's the last major component of the generation facility that physically had to go in place. So with that and with the stacks in place, the focus of construction has turned to completing all the piping, electrical, and control systems inside the building, and we continue to be on track for commercial operation in early 2015. Looking now to our existing generation fleet and other operational highlights of our Enmax Energy business, I'm pleased to report that our Enmax-owned generation fleet was available for 99% of its scheduled operations through 2013. We also completed a major maintenance outage at Calgary Energy Centre on time and on budget to keep that facility operating at its low cost. In 2013, we invested just over $285 million in our generation facilities, and in future years, we plan to continue to contract, build, and buy generation with an emphasis on adding cleaner natural gas-fueled supply to our portfolio. Our Downtown District Energy Center, which is the building that you're standing in today, attracted new customers in 2013, including the first residential complex right here in the East Village. As was mentioned, this facility was heavily impacted during the June flood, and despite having water up to the basement ceiling in this room that we're in today, this facility continued to be operational throughout the entirety of the flood. In 2014, this year, we'll add more boiler capacity to accommodate continued demand for this service in the downtown Calgary core. At Enmax, we make, move, and market electricity. Having just touched on the business that makes and markets electricity, let's review the success of our wires business, responsible for moving electricity. Enmax Power owns, operates, and maintains the City of Calgary's electric transmission and distribution infrastructure, covering 1,087 square kilometers. Its reliability is absolutely vital to our growing city. In 2013, Enmax Power completed 3 major capital infrastructure projects, building new substations in Calgary South to bolster the growing load that we have in the south end of our system in Calgary, and to improve capacity and to ensure high reliability of service. We spent just over $190 million investment here in Calgary, an unprecedented level of investment in response to our rapidly growing city. Enmax Power Services provides engineering, procurement, construction, and maintenance services for overhead, underground, and light rail infrastructure. They had another great year with strong contributions to Enmax earnings, and also completed all of their projects on time and on budget. This group was instrumental in restoring service to the LRT following June's flood, and successfully won the bid to lead the Northwest LRT expansion. We also continued to maintain Calgary streetlights on behalf of the city, and at the end of 2013, we had an average of 660 unresolved requests. Now, that's less than 1% of the 90,000 streetlights in total that we look after on behalf of the city. Switching now from what we do and what we did to why we do it, our customers. Whether a home or a small business, our customers count on us to provide them with reliable electricity and responsive customer service. In everything we do, we keep our customer needs top of mind. In 2013, we reached out to small business customers about their energy needs, and with their feedback, we introduced 2 new pricing plans for businesses. The new plans meet our customers' needs for more options and lower electricity rates. We are also reaching out beyond Calgary's border, including offering our products and services throughout Alberta, which we have been doing for a number of years now. Now, beginning in this year, January 1, through a 5-year contract, we are serving the City of Edmonton. We are now providing electricity and energy services to city-owned buildings, street lights, traffic signals, and the LRT systems in Edmonton, much like we do here in Calgary as well. On the residential side, across the Enmax businesses, we now have over 871,000 metered customer locations across all of the Enmax businesses that we serve, an approximate 5% increase over 2012, and a reflection of the continued growth we see in our city and the growth we see in our province. Also, our customer care center continues to raise the bar for world-class customer service. We were one of 3 finalists for the 2013 Call Center of the Year Award from SQM, which is a leading research firm that benchmarks over 450 leading North American call centers. And again, Enmax was ranked in the top 3. How we look after our customers is an important value that we uphold, and this extends to our communities in which we live and in which we work. Our customers are our neighbors. In 2013, Enmax invested $4.4 million in Calgary and our surrounding communities through our sponsorship and community investment programs. In July, we proudly announced a $300,000 commitment to the Calgary organizations of Aspen Family and Community Network Society and the Distress Center. This is our way to reach out to families and individuals during a time of need and assist them in making ends meet and building future life skills. By combining our expertise with these organizations, we will be able to have a significant long-term impact in helping those in our community who need it most. And in 2013, Enmax employees came out in full force to help our communities in so many ways. In the aftermath of the flood, more than 237 employees volunteered over 2,700 hours to clean up debris and help those affected by the flood. You see, if you're in here, you see some of the photos of our various volunteers, including our executive team and all levels of Enmax, who really came out during this period of time to help in any way that we could. But we didn't stop there. As Christmas drew near, Enmax employees brightened the spirits of those still recovering from the flood by stringing Christmas lights on the homes of High River and Bowness residents that had been impacted by the flood. Volunteers also lent a hand to light up the Alberta Children's Hospital and other community buildings and events. In all, Enmax provided 75,000 LED lights to brighten the lives of flood-affected residents in Calgary and High River. Our employees are not only champions in our community, but we are champions in the workplace too. The outstanding efforts of our employees led to numerous awards on provincial, national, and international scale in 2013, with Enmax receiving a series of prestigious awards. So let's look to the future. In 2014, our focus remains on continuing to provide our customers with safe, reliable, and affordable power today and into the future. You can expect to see us making investments in Alberta that will create value for our customers and for our shareholder, the City of Calgary. This will include investments in our transmission and distribution systems to ensure safe and reliable electricity for Calgary homes and businesses, and to generation facilities to grow our generation supply to make sure that we are well equipped to serve the needs of our customers for decades to come. Beyond the infrastructure, the steel, the wires, we talk a lot about those, we will continue to invest in our greatest asset, and that is our Enmax team. To do this, we remain committed to a strong safety culture. We will develop and grow our talent, manage our costs, and take advantage of technology to help us be more effective in the delivery of our service. We are on for you 24/7 while still keeping an eye on the horizon for what's ahead. I'd like to thank the Enmax team for your continued drive, your dedication, your passion, your can-do attitude. There's never been a challenge too great that we could not solve. 2013 tested us in many ways, and everyone stepped up to the challenge. To our customers, we know that we provide you a critical service that you need to power your lives and your businesses. So I continue to commit to you on behalf of the entire Enmax team that our tried and true promise remains the same, to serve you with safe, reliable power that you can depend on every day. With that, I'd like to close with a video that we created that honored all of us, but mainly honored all of those who helped Enmax during the flood. From the encouraging customers and our community who came out and encouraged us to keep going during difficult times, to get the lights back on, to our very dedicated employees, and also to the families of our employees who took care of things at home so that we could take care of things on the job for the City of Calgary during this time. Our job was made much easier because of the support we had from this, our amazing Calgary community. So I'll turn your attention to the video, and thank you.
Because you put on your gloves and held out your hand. Because you put on your boots and helped your neighbor. Because you picked up a shovel and put aside your fear. Because you never gave up. And because you care. Because you kept the home front strong. We could get the power back on. Thank you, Calgary.
Thank you, Gianna. I don't know if many of you saw that. I've just brought to memories last at Stampede, we hosted or sponsored the Family Feud that was held in the Corral, and I happened to have the opportunity the last day of Stampede to go to that event and was just listening, and they played this video at the Stampede, and I was just curious to see what would happen as a response, and I must admit it was a very heartwarming, great experience at the end of the video being played, unsolicited, unasked for or otherwise, that everybody broke out in tremendous applause and standing kind of an ovation. It was one of those moments really that you cherish. You have to be there at the time to experience, I guess, but many that have lived through the flood here in Calgary have had numerous of those kinds of experiences because of how the community stepped in, and Enmax clearly played a role in some of that. Today there are two microphones. We'll open it up to the public Q&A session at this stage. There are two microphones on either side that you are welcome to come forward and ask your question of the board or the management team. And members of council too, yes? Sorry. We see plenty of hands. Might I ask Councillor Chabot?
Thank you, Mr. Milton, and thank you, Janice, for that presentation. I found some things that you said in your presentation very encouraging, albeit I don't see a lot of direction in the year-end report, the annual report. specifically on a couple of issues. One, on the Shepherd facility, there was some discussion at one point that we may be able to sell off some of the waste heat to adjacent developments, and I'd just like to know whether or not we've incorporated that into the plan for potential future developments adjacent to that facility.
This thing? The Shepherd Energy Facility is what you're talking about? The Shepherd Energy Center has always been designed as it is currently being constructed. From the time that we had approval in 2011, which was considered our full notice to proceed that we received both by the Board of Directors and ultimately by this council, there was the plan that we are currently constructing is that it would be a combined cycle gas fuel plant as it currently is without additional waste heat supply. So at this time, given the Alberta market and the need for this facility in terms of just electricity, we intend and expect to complete construction of this without doing any additional steam supply or additional activities related to the plant. We'll operate it as is,
Okay.
or as being constructed.
So no intent on selling some of that waste heat to adjacent development?
The design of this facility like I mentioned, from 2011, that has never been part of the plans associated with Shepherd Energy Center. As we looked at other facilities, at times we have talked about that, but the decision was that plant is there to produce electricity and only electricity for the benefit of the province into the grid.
Okay. Just one other question on the technological advancements and research and development. There's a lot of mention of alternate sources of energy. What I did not see in the report is looking at grid level type mass storage and whether or not we're moving forward on any of those kind of initiatives.
It's very important. We stay very closely connected with all of the electricity industry, not only here in Canada, but also throughout North America with the United States. And so we continually monitor new technologies that come to bear. Our Shepherd Energy Center, for example, is an example of technology that 20, 30 years ago didn't exist. So we are intent on making sure that we implement viable technology across our system, whether it's in our wires or our generation, when it makes sense economically for us to do so. So at this stage, we do not have specific plans immediately in terms of additional storage technology, but we are continuing to participate in the industry as it gets developed and look to the opportunity in the future when it makes economic sense to deploy it, then we would look to see how it best fits our company.
Excellent. Thank you for those answers.
Alderman, Councillor Sutherland, we'll get there yet.
Thank you. I have some questions on behalf of my residents that they've sent to me, and some of them are very basic, but they're also important, and we'll take the opportunity because we're doing a webcast to explain some of them. The first one is probably the call center's number one, I'm assuming is why is my bill so complicated? And why isn't there a glossary explaining every single line and what it means?
So one of the things that we try very, very hard to do is to help explain to customers so that they can have transparency of the information and understand what's going on. We recognize there are many different line items on the bill. What we place on that bill is in many cases dictated by the Alberta Utility Commission. We are following the regulations placed on us to ensure that we place all those different line items on the bill. Here in Calgary, in addition, on behalf of the City of Calgary, Enmax bills for city services for water and waste removal, and so there are a number of additional items on customers' bills here in Calgary because they have the benefit of getting one bill for all of these different services, but we bill that on behalf of the city. So what we try to do, if people have questions about their bill, they can call our contact center. We have really, as you hear, really very highly trained and professional customer service representatives who will be more than happy to answer their questions and walk them through. We also have information on our website, www.com www.enmax.com, and we really are there to help answer those questions as easily and quickly as we can for customers.
Thank you. And the second question was referring to the current wind energy that an Enmax is using. Are we expanding that, and what has been the current, is there cost efficiencies, and has it been effective?
One of the approaches that we've taken is to have a portfolio of different types of generation, and we're adding to that with our gas-fired generation, but we have a number of wind facilities. At this stage, these facilities have been in place for a number of years. They're in the southern part of Alberta, south of Calgary, and our plans at this stage are not, our current plans are not to add additional wind capacity, at least in terms of Enmax, but there is additional wind capacity being built throughout the province.
Have they been cost effective?
Yes, wind energy has been cost effective, and I think that one of the things that we see here, particularly in southern Alberta, is there's a lot of wind, and I've learned that after having moved here. And there's when the wind blows, this is an opportunity to be able to generate electricity at low cost and in an environmentally responsible and friendly way. One of the things we do and why we're building gas-fueled generation is because we all recognize that the wind doesn't always blow, and it doesn't always blow when we need it to. So we're making sure that we're focusing on building gas-fueled generation so that we have a reliable source of electricity to complement and in combination with some of the wind generation that we have.
Thank you. And the final question from the residents, the most one I got is, you mentioned in your presentation that we're now supplying electricity to Edmonton, and people have mentioned, I guess in the media they're saying, well, you know, why are Edmonton's costs lower than Calgary, especially if we're supplying energy?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I think the information that's in the newspaper is, you might have read recently about the cost of electricity. That's related to what's called the regulated rate option, and that is set by the Alberta Utility Commission in different locations. With regard to providing electricity to the city and electricity services to the city of Edmonton, you know, I know that Calgary, and I have said this sometimes, Calgary and Edmonton, I know, compete on everything. What this is really about is we have what's called a deregulated market here in Alberta. And through that mechanism, citizens of Alberta, whether they are residents or businesses or even the cities, like the city of Calgary and the city of Edmonton, has the opportunity to choose who their electricity supplier is. And so what the city of Edmonton has done is they have gone out and they went through a competitive process, and they found that the best company and the best offer for them in terms of their electricity needs came from Enmax. And so they chose and took advantage of competition in the electricity market to choose Enmax, and we're really proud to serve the city of Edmonton now. And we've gotten a rate, and we've established electricity rate in a contract with the city. So we will be providing these services to them for the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors Farrell, then Woolley, and then Chu.
Thank you. Congratulations on a challenging and successful year. Regarding district energy, could you describe the reasons behind the renewed success? What's changed?
Well, and one of the things that you know that we have, and it was mentioned, we have the great leadership team of Enmax here with me, and Dave Wren and his organization has really been the one that's also overseen this. I think there's two things regarding the success that we've seen. First of all, well, there's a number of things with regard to district energy. I think first of all that it took a little bit of time for people to appreciate and understand the value that this had and the reliability. I think this is a change for people here to be able to rely on a central facility like this to be able to provide their heat. And as we were able and continue to be able to demonstrate how highly reliable this facility is and our ability to provide that heat, there's been a growing confidence. I mean, we kept this facility running throughout the flood, which even despite the fact that the bottom part of this building was flooded. So I think the reliability has contributed significantly. And I'd also say that the city of Calgary has put in place the density standards and an encouragement for the buildings in the downtown core to take advantage of this type of offering to the benefit of the community. And I'd applaud the city council for having passed those mechanisms to encourage companies and buildings here to take advantage of this. So we see continued interest. In fact, as I mentioned, the interest is now surpassing the current capability in this building. We have the physical space, so we will be adding more equipment upstairs this year to be able to serve more customers.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Woolley.
Thank you very much. I just want to give a kudos to the communications that took place during the flood. I was evacuated from my house, and we couldn't get our power back on, and it was a simple Twitter message, and 2 hours later our power was on, and I've heard that many times. So I really want to take, I mean, your guys got the power onto this city amazingly, but your communications from your comms team was like next level impressive. So my hat's off to how fast, and I know a lot of people in my constituency live in condo buildings, and so there was a lot more challenge there from the houses, and a big props to your team's work. Thank you.
Mayor, would you like to stand, take a bow on behalf of
please,
your communications team?
My question is around redevelopment, and there's a lot of our corridors are redeveloping, and there's significant costs associated with burying power lines. And what I've seen in some cases is become prohibitive. So they're actually, developers are setting back the property and shrinking the size of the space as it's cheaper to do that. And I'm just wondering what you guys are doing around how can we decrease the cost of burying those cables, because it's substantial to the point that new developments are keeping the power lines up. And I know wherever possible, we're looking as a city to bury those, and there's some significant barriers to developers and how we can bury those. And if you have any thoughts or comments about how we can do.
Well, we certainly, I will tell you what first of all, there is significant cost, and it's not cost specifically or unique to Calgary or unique to Enmax. It really has to do with the technology and the additional type of technology you have to use when you bury it. It's more difficult to access. And not just the one-time upfront costs, but the ongoing cost to maintain and ensure reliability is greater because they're buried. But so what we continue to do, back to the technologies, we will continue to work with the industry, and as technology advances, perhaps those costs become lower in the future, but we don't see anything changing in the near term. In the meantime, I know that we work very closely with the developers and also with the City of Calgary, and wherever we can to minimize the impact and the disruption from the electricity infrastructure into the communities, we certainly do that. And I think we rely on that strong level of communication and collaboration back and forth. So we will continue to do all that we can and look for future technology. But in the meantime, it's really important that we do this as most cost effectively and most importantly, reliably. And we have some constraints. Again, not specific to Calgary. It's just the electricity infrastructure that other cities are challenged with as well.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and just that there's major corridor redevelopment happening in the city, and if we are rebuilding and redoing the streetscapes, we are going to be left with power lines for many decades. So, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Chu, then Councillor Putman.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of people living in my ward have asked me the same question: is that Enmax is making lots of money, $350 million or so, and giving back portion of it to the city, and what happened to the others? So can you explain to the people watching at home or people listening?
You know, Councilman Chu, we are very fortunate that we live in a growing city and a growing province, and we all benefit from that. But also with that growth comes the need to invest in critical infrastructure, and electricity is the lifeblood of our economy, and that's a critical piece of infrastructure that has to go in place. So as you've heard this morning, what Enmax, we're committed to a strong and stable and growing dividend for the city of Calgary, that we know that it is very important to continue to have the stability of that dividend for Calgary. So we adjust our business and operate ourselves to ensure we can do that. But in addition to that, it is also equally critical to the success of our province and to Calgary that we have a reliable electricity system. So we are reinvesting, and those profits are going back into the investment in transmission and distribution wires here in Calgary and to new generation facilities like you see Shepherd Energy Center, so that we can have that strong system. Through that investment, that's how Enmax will be able to have that strong dividend going forward for the city of Calgary.
Okay, thank you. And then on the page 63 in the report there, it says a foreign exchange right in the middle, loss and gain on the cost of service provided. Just kind of curious why we have foreign exchange loss or gain, because the service provided, I thought it happened in Calgary or Alberta.
I'm very fortunate, or we are very fortunate, that we have David Halford here, who's our CFO, and I'm going to ask David to explain and answer that question for us.
Sure. Should I stand up?
I think that's probably works best.
I'm sorry, maybe if you could give me the reference first.
Okay, this is page 63,
Okay.
right in the middle, the cost of service provided. On the bottom, there foreign exchange loss and gain.
Okay.
We're getting there.
We,
Sorry, that was the booklet I have in my binder here.
Foreign exchange loss. David, it's under the segmented information. Here you go. Does that help?
Under cost of sales projected.
Okay.
so we have a number of contracts that we have with suppliers that are denominated in currencies other than Canadian dollars. And in some cases, the foreign exchange exposure that we have there gets translated and incurs either a gain or loss. And so in some, that would find its way into our financial statements. Often, we would hedge that gain or loss by buying forward the currency that we need to use to pay the suppliers. And in this particular case, that is the net gain that we had on the difference between our hedge and the amount we had due to our suppliers. So that's the nature of it all. It really is in relation to some of the big projects we have U.S. dollar exposure.
Okay, thank you. And my next question would be page 67.
You might
Right.
want to stay up there, David.
Just in case, yeah, you need it. Or in the middle there. And changes in allowance for doubtful accounts. It says the provision at the beginning of the year was 6.7, I assume it's $1 million. And is write-offs and provision at the end of the year, 7.8. Can you explain a little bit about this?
So we would have amounts due from both residential customers as well as commercial and industrial customers. In any given year, we would take provisions against those which we didn't think were collectible into the future, and also take write-offs of those accounts that ultimately did not become collectible, and we were comfortable we were never going to collect. The net change that we have going on through the account in any given year has to do with that expectation for collection of those receivables. And in this particular year, we had those changes go through the financials. It simply is the expectations and the estimates that we make as to the collectability of those receivables.
Okay, with this number here, in comparison to other city or other company, is that pretty normal? Percentage-wise?
We assess our allowance for bad debts and our write-offs frequently against normal comparables across the country, and they look very reasonable against other countries or companies generally, yes.
Okay. And I also understand that there's a program for one-time forgiveness from Enmax, because somebody new all of a sudden got a bill for a large number, and then actually there's some Enmax, some people email back and say, yeah, there's some sort of program.
I'm not sure specifically what you're talking about, but I will say this. I mean, we recognize that at times, sometimes it's a unique set of circumstances like we had for the flood last year, or other circumstances that many of our customers at various times are struggling, and they're having difficulty perhaps paying their electricity bill. And what we try very hard to do is to work with customers on terms that they can work with. So what we encourage people to do is that if they are having some difficulty paying their electricity bill, to give us a call. And we will work with them and see if we can make arrangements so that they can still pay that off, but pay that off in a way that works for them to help them get through perhaps their crisis. It's also why we have partnered, and you heard me mention earlier about the Aspen Community Network Society and the Distress Center. Our partnership with them, we are helping them. They often get calls from people who are struggling and having difficulty. So we are working with them so that they can give people information and help them see how perhaps they could save on their electricity bill, or help them arrange through other agencies perhaps some assistance during time of need. So it's why we support these agencies, because we recognize that sometimes people go through difficult times, and electricity is fundamental, and we're going to do what we can. So I'm not sure the specific program you're mentioning, but I will say we try very hard to work with our customers on their specific set of circumstances.
So I take it that would be under the Goodwill.
No, that does not come under Goodwill at all. That is, we work very hard to collect those payments, and that turns out to be a revenue over time with us. David, you may want to explain Goodwill as it relates to, it's not related to this at all. Okay.
Goodwill has nothing to do with this. This would find its way into the write-offs and/or the provision for allowance for doubtful accounts.
Yeah. Goodwill's an accounting term unrelated to the goodwill that we do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Quibbins?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Enmax, for all your work during the flood. I have two flood-related questions, a general and a specific question. I'm wondering if I could get a fairly detailed response, please, to the sorts of things Enmax has done to reconstruct and recover and perhaps prepare for the next emergency that might come our way. And then secondly, well, I'll go to the specific question after the first one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to answer the first one? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
We've done a number of things in terms to reconstruct after the flood last year, and then to be better prepared in terms of our infrastructure. First of all, I will say that our system is very sound. We did all the repairs that were necessary back last year, and made sure that our system remained sound. So it is a good sound system today. We've done a number of things. Many of you here in the downtown core, our system here in downtown, given that it is underground, it is designed and constructed to allow for water to come in, because water does go through there. And obviously the flood was an extreme example, particularly given the amount of silt that we dealt with. So we got all of that cleaned out. We inspected all of our equipment. What we've done is just gone back through that system, and we continue to do that, and ensure that wherever we can seal equipment appropriately, we're just checking those seals and making sure that they remain strong and healthy as they did. And for the amount of flood water that came through the city and the amount of silt we're dealing with, our system had very little damage. So it really demonstrated it can withstand that type of event. The other area that many of you heard about was our substation 32, which is adjacent to the Bow River near the Douglasdale area of Calgary. And the way the river flowed, that substation became surrounded by water as part of the flood. and the raging river eroded some of the land next to that substation. The substation itself remained dry, but water came in all around that substation. We are taking a number of actions and have taken a number of actions to to protect that substation in the event we had higher floodwaters in the future. And we are working with the City of Calgary. They are doing some work on the banks near that substation and into the river that we believe will provide additional protections in the future. In addition, we are building a flood wall of sorts out of large concrete blocks and floodgates inside the perimeter of that facility and installing pumps so that we can protect that facility in the event water, again, we had another flood like we had last year. And all of these measures will be complete by the end of this month.
Excuse me, thank you. Specifically, some communities in the last flood had to have the entire community cut off from power. And I think there's some communities that we're understanding now we might have more flexibility to adjust and restrict the power outages to those areas that really did need to have the power cut, as opposed to a more broad-based cut to a whole community. And I'm wondering if you could report on progress you've made on some of those issues as well.
Well, during the flood last year, when a state of emergency was announced, we fell under the jurisdiction of CEMA, the Calgary Emergency Management Agency. And as we were responding and working with them on disconnecting and shutting down the electrical system as emergency evacuation orders were being placed in different communities, that was being done for the primary reason of public safety, because we said many times electricity and water don't mix, and it was really imperative that we shut down the electrical system as these communities flooded to ensure that we had no concern with public safety. We had, I know, a number of communities where that was a very broad evacuation order by the city, and as a result, the boundaries that we used to shut down the power during that period of time were consistent with the evacuation order that the City of Calgary put out. What we strive very hard to do, and you saw this in the restoration, is as we could deem locations safe and dry, we were able to then bring the power back onto those communities. So we have the ability to segment, if you will, our system and be able to respond specifically to certain areas. And that's what we did. In fact, some of the communities here in Calgary, as soon as the city acknowledged and we were able to confirm with the city that they were dry, that part of the system came back on. Our efforts today continue to just work with the city, and we've done a lot of work with the city on lessons learned and how we could all do better last year, although I will say that the efforts of both the city and the company were tremendous during that period of time.
And I would agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Might have you state your name first. Anybody that comes up and asks questions.
That's Helen.
I'm Helen Mowat. I'm an ex-teacher. I'm a generalist, and would say that I'm a psychologist and a philosopher. And I have quite a few questions, but I'm sure I won't be able to discuss them all. But
we are always open at any time too for questions that can't always be answered, to submit them, and we'll ensure everybody gets a full response.
I am concerned about the amount of time and energy you are talking about the flood. I think it's time to move on. There are a lot of things that we could have done differently, and even in the amount of time, like 24 hours notice, or up at different stations along from the Banff down. But we could, and I understand that our mayor, it was mentioned in the paper that our mayor knew about a possibility of a flood, and perhaps he could have done more things more quickly. He may not like what I said, but I just picked that up through the newspaper. Another thing is I like good solid questions, and I see that there are some members on our council board that do work in the interest of our citizens of Calgary. However, the structures are often that this is not always possible, and I'm not liking how the questions are pretty frivolous and not with more depth, because they have a lot more knowledge than I have about questions, about figures, etc. So I think that to show that you really are working for the citizens of Calgary as opposed to a private organization or a private group, which deregulation has caused this. And I have concerns about how much honesty that is for the citizens of Calgary.
Relevance?
Yeah, just a minute. Mr. Woolley. Thank you. I have concerns about how much the citizens of Calgary pay for their tax, their Enmax bill. I know one day Mr. Ninchi was on the radio. Don't listen to the radio that much because I turned to alternative radio. And somebody called in and said how much he paid for...
I'm sorry, Chair, is there a question here?
Excuse me,
Just
Mr. Woolley.
leave it to the chair, and I'll deal with this question.
That's right. I don't know how you got in.
Please proceed, Helen.
Anyway, I have concerns about the high amount of bills we pay. I'm a teacher, an ex-teacher. I know how much I bring in, and I know I live on very little. And a lot of these people are way above the mean that, above what I can afford to pay. And I think that it needs more thought and heart and caring from many of our councillors. And yes, there are a few that work for us and try their best within the structure.
Helen, I think you do raise a good question. Electricity and affordability of that to everybody's paramount. Work very hard to ensuring how do we provide the right source of electricity. That's even when you get into choosing things like Shepherd. How can you affordably provide electricity? People does get down to having a mix of that right solution. I'll just leave it to whether Gianna has anything further she'd like to add.
Well, I just want to say, Helen, I remember you coming here last year, so thank you for coming out again today. And I don't know if this is your question today. I'll get to your question in a moment. But I remember last year you asking if where our customer services representatives are. And I remember telling you that last year that if you talk to an Enmax person on the telephone, you're going to be talking to somebody here in Calgary. So I wanted to just let you know that if you called Enmax today, the person you're talking to on the other end of the phone is also still here in Calgary today. So I wanted to let you know that. But back to your question, one of the things that I would encourage anyone to do is the deregulated electricity market in Alberta gives customers an opportunity to shop around, if you will, and look around for different offerings in the market and different prices for their electricity. And you can sign up. And Enmax's product here is called Easymax, and you have the ability to sign up, often at a much lower rate, and you can sign up and sign on for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Enmax offers a 5-year electricity rate, and that's like buying an insurance policy because it gives you a lower electricity rate, and it guarantees that rate for the number of years that you sign up for, so you don't have to worry about electricity prices going up and down. So I know that sometimes things are difficult, and I would just encourage you, encourage everyone in Alberta to understand the choices and the options you have. And what Enmax is trying very hard to do is we're offering new products to our customers and new types of offerings because we know that one size doesn't fit all, and different people may have different needs. So I'd encourage you to give us a call, and we will work with you to see if we can find a plan that meets your needs.
Can I ask you? Oh, it doesn't matter because I pay a set rate per month. But
Okay.
every time I've been in rental of my unit that I have, it has gone up every year. So, Altalink, what different? How do you see when Warren Buffett, if the commission allows it, how does the buying of Altalink affect the Albertans and their electricity? Isn't it electricity as well?
Yeah, I mean, Altalink is an electricity company, and certainly this would be a question for Altalink. But one of the things I'll say about Alberta is we have the Alberta Utility Commission, and rates that are set, the Enmax electricity rates, for example, that we charge here in Calgary for our wires business, the delivery of electricity. Enmax goes to the Utility Commission, and we have to make filings to explain our rates, and Altalink has to do the same for theirs. So I look to the Commission and the government of Alberta and Canada to really do
Right.
their responsibility in what will happen with that merger, or with that acquisition.
I hope it doesn't go through.
Helen, before we go to more questions, I want to make sure everybody in the audience has an opportunity to field some questions. I'm going to limit everybody to 1 or 2 questions. With time, we can come back, but I would like to see that everybody gets an opportunity to ask some questions. Are there others?
Jonathan Sundstrom, local business owner. Hello, everyone. Too many people to say hi to. A couple questions here, first and foremost. You're streaming this AGM, correct?
Correct.
And are you recording it? Yes, we are. Do you upload it to the internet for people who cannot make it to be able to view it?
Yes, it is made available for people who can see it and view it later on.
And where is it hosted? Okay, and does that include past AGMs?
I believe so, but it includes the past couple of AGMs. Those will be available upon request. We typically just publish the most current one on the website.
So just for people who might not be able to hear, we typically put the most current AGM and a link within our website to be able to view the most current AGM. So at this point, it will become this AGM when we post it. But if someone has an interest in looking at past AGMs, at least for the last couple of years we've done this, you can contact us and we'll make those available to people.
Okay, so
Okay.
an individual would have to contact you to see something that we've already paid for, is that correct? Just
Well-
want to clarify that.
well,
We're paying for all this equipment here, yes? This is a lot of expensive equipment.
Well, this is, Enmax is paying for this equipment in terms of our, the Enmax, part of our budgets.
Correct, and Enmax is a subsidiary of the city of Calgary, correct?
It is a
Correct.
wholly owned corporation of this,
Okay,
incorporated for the city
Just
of
wanna show
Calgary.
this tie-in
Calgary
because-
is our owner.
right, because you can upload these things for free on YouTube for anyone to be able to peruse it at their convenience.
We certainly will take that consideration, how to make it accessible. I think it's a good question as to, we do want the Calgarians and others to have access to these publicly kind of meetings. So that's a good question, and we'll review that. Other questions?
This local access fee, when you're doing your work in Edmonton and the servicing there in Edmonton, are they being charged 11.1% also?
Thanks. I'll answer that because that's actually not an Enmax question. That the local access fee in the city of Edmonton is different than the city of Calgary's. The local access fees and how they work, the rate and how they function is set by the municipality. So Edmonton's is different than Calgary's.
Okay, so then the 11.1% rate, is that set by city council?
It's set by the city, yes.
Okay, interesting. On
So,
page,
I'll just add one of the things, because Enmax collects that fee on behalf of the city of Calgary, and 100% of the monies that we receive associated with that fee that are billed on the bills is provided to the city of Calgary, and Enmax retains no money associated with the local access fee because it is specifically related to the city of Calgary.
okay, so in other words, that's the flow through, right? Because on page 10, it shows
Correct.
your LAF actually being expensed of the same amount. So that actually flows in the city coffers, and that is above and beyond the $68.3 million
Correct.
this year?
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
We'll limit you to one more question then, because I want to see there's opportunities for others.
Certainly. Mr. Milchin, you had mentioned to
Helen.
Helen there pertaining to questions, and if there is not opportunity to respond to them, that they would be responded to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting because I've got some emails that I sent to the board of directors a year ago plus, and I've not had a response. So perhaps we could have a conversation on camera. You could clarify a few of those things for me because I'm a little confused. I spoke to your media director. She directed me to the board of directors at enmax.com.
Correct. So we have responded to questions that we've received, and I'm fully aware of those questions, and they don't always come under my signature, but we have ensured that all the answers have come back that I've received. So if I've missed something, we're certainly happy to see that we respond completely and fully to any and all questions that come. That's been what we've always done.
So if it's addressed to the board of directors, does that go to your desk?
The board, certainly I will see it, but a lot of these things are operational, and we do ask and invite those with the expertise of our management team. It is their role to actually respond to all of the operational questions. There are governance questions that would be more appropriate that I, as a chair of the board, could ask that would be appropriate to the board, and those are the ones that I would specifically respond. But anything to do with the operations of Enmax, it would come under Gianna or her team's signature.
Okay, let someone else ask some questions. I may have a few follow-up questions.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Oscar Feck. I find it very interesting to do a good. It was a good presentation, good questions asked from the councillors, but the bottom line is always, how much do we receive? How much are we spending? Where is the balance? What I'm saying about all this is, Enmax was sold and not sold. I told you last year that I did put an offer on. I gave him 200 million more because I knew Enmax had a lot of money in the bank at that time, and I could have bought it with my own money if I would have gotten Enmax. We would have been worth billions of dollars if I would have gotten Enmax. And I'm not knocking anybody, but that's the system we're living in.
Can't respond to those things of
No,
the
I
past.
know.
Do you have a question for today?
Yes, my question is, like was indicated, Alta Link, and since 1998, taxpayers got $800 million. And now the debt is over $4 billion. And Enmax is always borrowing $100 million, $200 million. I see it in the paper all the time. I find it very interesting how we're all sort of being led by this is an absolute gospel truth, but in reality it is not the truth in a way that, not that the books are being manipulated or fudged the way you want to call it, but in some ways they are, because this is the accounting that we have in these days. This is part of the globalization. And I'm not knocking any of you. You all have to follow your rules and laws also.
Do you have a question in that?
Okay, my question is, the Enmax is spending way too much money on things that they shouldn't be spending on advertising. I see big pages in the paper, everywhere. This probably spend about $500 million a year helping out in all this, which the taxpayers don't know. The bottom line is, you must listen to the taxpayers. What comes in stays there. Spend what you have to spend, and the balance should go back to the taxpayers. Simple as that. What's the question?
What I might just say in general with respect to that is, there is a substantial amount of oversight on the expenditures, the authorizations. This is a growing city, substantial, the need to reinvest in infrastructure, transmission, distribution, and even new generation. This plant in Shepherd that's coming on is just under $1.4 billion, a very substantive investment to supply long-term, reliable, safe energy for people in the city. And without those investments, you know, we would risk not having the power. We would risk a lot of other things. And so the accuracy of that information, very pleased to report that you can assume that they are not being fudged. They're audited. We have a chief financial officer who's extremely diligent on these things. And I would take great pride in saying the degree of reliability and accuracy of the information and transparency that we do provide. Whether we agree with all of the accounting financial rules in the world, that's a different question, and I can't debate that today. I have to apologize because our time has come for concluding, but I would invite any and all, if you do have questions that have not been answered today, and that is our commitment, and to my knowledge, we will continue to fulfill that commitment. If there's anything been missed, please supply it to myself, to Gianna, to Diana Stevenson, our corporate secretary, and our undertaking is to do just that. I want to thank members of council, members of the public at large, this video streaming, and thank you for the support of Enmax for an outstanding 2013. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.